Alright, so today we're going to be talking about the S25 here versus the S23 here, and is this worth the upgrade here? So Samsung is going to give you, let's see, $400 for your S23 here. So is this worth the upgrade here? So this upgrade is going to be pretty minimal for the most part here, but let's go ahead and get into it. Really love this color. They have some really awesome colors this year for the base model, much better than the Ultra series. Alright, so these phones are extremely similar looking. The only way you can really tell the difference is you do have the thicker camera on here. So that's basically the only way you can tell the difference. They pretty much feel the same in the hand as far as the design here. Now there is actually a bit of a difference here on the sides here. It's not as sharp on the S23. They really like squared this off, so you can kind of feel a slight difference here. It's kind of hard to notice, but hopefully you guys could kind of see that it's not as like flat right here, I guess. But yeah, so matte finish on both. They're both IP68 dust and water resistant, and that's basically it. So let's talk about these displays. So there's a small display change, but they're roughly the same. So the S23 has a dynamic AMOLED display. It's 120 Hz HDR10 plus, and it goes up to 1750 nits at 6.1 inches, 1080p 425 with Gorilla Glass Victus 2. Now you do have a slightly bigger panel here. It's a 6.2 inch display on the S25, and now it's also dynamic LTPO display. It's AMOLED 120 Hz HDR10 plus, and this does a much better job outdoors. It's 2600 nits, so in direct sunlight it's much brighter. It's 1080p 416 for the PPI. So overall, that is basically it. The actual display is really going to be the LTPO and then the max brightness. The LTPO is going to help with battery life, and yeah, that's pretty much it. They both look pretty much identical as far as the display quality. Alright, so let's talk about the specs a little bit here. So we do have the new Snapdragon 8 Elite processor here, and something to mention about the S25 is that this phone does have 7 years of major OS updates as well, compared to the 4 years that you will get on the S23. And then also we do have 128 gigs of internal storage, and we do have 12 gigs of RAM on this base model now. Now it is running One UI 7, and One UI 7 will come to the S23. It's just not out yet. But this phone, it does have the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2, 128 gigs and 8 gigs of RAM. So you guys can see the score difference here, big score jump in the multi-core. And then also for our GPU, you'll see a pretty big jump when it comes to GPU. And for all of my benchmark people here, here's the difference in Wildlife Extreme. 34.71 frames versus 18.14 here, and you guys could see the temperature and the FPS 16 to 48, 12 to 26. Now when it comes to your general speed and animations, you won't see too much of a difference here. You would really have to take advantage of, you know, more intense stuff. So I guess like maybe emulators, maybe editing in like 4K or something like that. But the S23, the issue, that's why I said the issue here is that the S23 does these things really well. It's still a very powerful chipset. So you can see it's not too far off of the S25 in just general performance here. They feel exactly the same here. So even if you're like more of a gamer, the S23 actually is still very good for gaming, which I'll show you guys. But yeah, it is a slightly faster phone when it comes to, you know, getting into games and stuff like that. But if like general applications, you really won't feel the difference at all. And then the animations on One UI 7 are a bit smoother. So, but like I said, it'll get the One UI 7 update. So, but it's still pretty smooth on One UI 6. But yeah, so there's not a lot here for general performance. It's just a slight difference here. As far as the gaming performance goes, the S23 still does a very good job. Like I said, the S23's processor does a great job here. It can play at 120 frames still on PUBG. It can play Genshin really well, Call of Duty really well. So like I said, I don't really know how you would take advantage of this, you know, CPU GPU bump. Like maybe like longer down the line, but for right now, there's barely, you know, any real difference here, even for people who like to, you know, play games competitively. So I would say, you know, if you can if you are like a really intense user, maybe doing like emulators or something like really heavy, then yeah, but I think the average person doesn't really need to upgrade for speed or for gaming. Let's check out the speakers at max volume. We'll start with the S23. So the speakers are a little bit louder, but they do sound exactly the same. It's just that the S25 is just louder. Yeah, the bass is just a little bit louder. It's not dramatically, but it is noticeably louder. So that is pretty good. And then also, guys, we still have pretty much the same AI stuff. So if you are someone who's a fan of like the AI stuff, you know, once One UI 7 comes, I'm sure more stuff will come, but you have the AI stuff, you know, on here, and you know, you could take advantage of that. But like I said, the only real difference is the actual software support here, because they are, once this gets One UI 7, it's going to be running basically the same software for the most part. Let's talk about the cameras here. Can you guys notice the difference here? Now, these cameras have stayed the same for a minute here. So both of these phones have a 50 megapixel standard on here. They both have a 10 megapixel telephoto with 3x optical, and they both have a 12 megapixel ultra wide. They both can shoot in 8K 24 and 30, and they both have a 12 megapixel selfie that also shoots in 4K 60 here. So let me know if you guys notice any type of improvement or difference with the photos. Alright, so let's talk about the screen on time, the battery life specs, and all that. So you do have a slightly bigger battery at 4,000 milliamps versus the 3,900 milliamp hour battery on the S23, and that's pretty much it. They both have the same charging speeds, 25 watt charging, 15 watt wireless charging, and then you have your reverse wireless charging on both. And the battery life on the S23 for me is really not bad at all. The battery life is a little bit better on the S25, but it's not dramatically better. But this does have very good standby time. But I would say, guys, the battery life is not super dramatic. So I wouldn't upgrade for battery life. After using this phone now, it just seems like the battery life is just a little bit better, but not, you know, dramatically better. And honestly, it could be because, you know, over time you'll get a little bit of battery degrade, so it could be that. But honestly, I don't see that massive difference in screen on time and just standby time. Yeah, so overall, guys, this upgrade here is very, very minimal here. The real upgrade here is probably the CPU, GPU, but the issue with that is you gotta be somebody who can take advantage of that type of power. And besides that, yeah, you do get slightly better battery life. I thought the cameras looked, fairly similar for the most part. I'm curious to see what you guys think about that. But the 7 years of updates is probably one thing as well. So yeah, I mean, if you trade your S23 in and those things interest you, then that's fine. But it's not really a necessary upgrade.